Another big change that came along with the Renters' Rights Act was taking rent in advance. Restrictions on the amount that we take and when we take it. In this video, I'll be sharing with you all of the things that you need to know to ensure you're operating safely and compliantly. Hi, I'm Bennett, Compliance Director at Tenancy Management Hub. And in this video, I want to talk you through how rent in advance has changed within the Renters' Rights Act and what that means for you in practical terms. So, the two key facts that I want to talk to you about taking rent in advance. Firstly, is the amount of rent that we are now legally allowed to ask a tenant to pay. And secondly, when you are actually able to ask and accept the payment from the tenant. So first things first, rent in advance. Landlords and letting agents can no longer ask or request for any more than 1 month's rent in advance. What does that mean practically? We've all experienced tenants where they have offered to pay full rental term in advance, 6 months rent in advance, 12 months rent in advance, because it may well suit their circumstances. Letting agents and landlords will consider tenants that may not meet referencing criteria with additional rent in advance, giving them that additional security. That is no longer the case under the Renters' Rights Act. We are no longer allowed to request any more than 1 month's rent. Some landlords and some agents used to request prorated amounts, 1 month plus the amount of days. For example, if you wanted to pay on the 1st, that too is no longer available. It's a very, very grey area, but tenants can offer to pay rent in advance and a landlord is legally allowed to accept. But from an agency point of view, if you are going to go down this route and allow that as a process within your organisation, you need to ensure that you are satisfied that there is a process in place to be able to evidence and prove that the tenant made the offer and was not influenced in any way to pay any more than 1 month's rent in advance. Now, a really small, untalked about change that came with the Renters' Rights Act. We are no longer able to ask tenants to pay the rent before the tenancy is legally signed by both parties and executed. What does that mean in practice? Well, in practice, we have a legally binding contract, and only at that point are we, as the letting agent or as a landlord, able to make a request for the tenant to make payment. Now, we all know that we now have a legally binding contract. Should the tenant fail to pay that rent, the landlord could be left in a situation where we have to hand over the keys to the tenant, but the first month's rent hasn't been paid. As letting agents, we need to make sure that we're doing everything that we can to ensure that that risk is minimised. Rent guarantee is an option, and every letting agent should be educating their landlords as to why this is now more essential rather than optional to avoid landlords' loss of income and revenue. So in short, all we are allowed to take from a tenant prior to execution of the tenancy agreement is a 1 week holding deposit and the security deposit. The first month's rent can be requested, but not until after the tenancy agreement has been legally executed. So both parties have signed, the contract has been executed, and the tenancy is in force. As a letting agent, referencing has become critical. Pre-qualification is also now critical. This is now risk management, not administration. And landlords need to be certain that the tenant that they are moving into their property meets all of the criteria that they're looking for. So as I'm sure you'll agree, there is lots to consider, even just about taking rent in advance. Now, I hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you'd like to see more, please hit the subscribe button now. I look forward to seeing you on the next video.